Well, hello and welcome to the Small Business Matters podcast. I'm Gary Stockton with Experian. There is so much going on in the economy these days, so much for small businesses to deal with. We're in the throes of another significant variant of the virus. Supply chain issues continue amid rising inflation. And if that were not enough, employers are having a hard time finding employees because many are either staying home, taking care of their kids, or finding new roles in different industries altogether. It's a lot for small businesses to deal with. So to help put it all into perspective, our good friend Ryan Sweet is joining us today to offer his take and an economic outlook for the new year. Now, if you're not familiar, Ryan's a senior director at Moody's Analytics, a leading provider of economic research. He contributes regularly to the Economic View, also Moody's Inside Economics podcast, and is a member of the US macroeconomics team in Westchester, Pennsylvania. His areas of specialization include the US economy, monetary policy, capital markets, and forecasting high-frequency economic indicators. Ryan, welcome to the Small Business Matters podcast.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me.
To kick things off, the economy is doing well, but it doesn't feel that way. But why doesn't it feel like it's doing well?
Well, I think there's a few things behind that. I still think the economy's near-term prospects are tethered with the pandemic. And every time we go through a various wave of COVID cases, it weighs on business sentiment, it weighs on investor sentiment, and consumers. Consumers don't feel great when they see case counts surging across the country. But as you pointed out, the economy is doing really well. The job market is tightening. We have GDP growth that's among the fastest since the early 1980s. I think one reason why it may not feel as good as it really is because of inflation. So that's really cutting into people's household purchasing power, and inflation is not popular. So I think that's what's kind of muddying the picture of how the economy is really doing versus how people feel about it.
So what do you think is driving up inflation? What's causing
It's temporary. Yeah. So the good news is the worst of the inflation is likely past. So we should see inflation moderate. And there's a couple of reasons behind that. First, what drove inflation higher was these supply chain disruptions. I think the issues with supply chain is both supply, just having enough containers, having workers at docks to unload these containers, but it's also demand. So U.S. consumer spending on goods, just stuff that we buy, it went through the roof over the last year, and that put a lot of pressure, a lot of additional strain on supply chains. Inventories are really low. Anyone's gone to a used car, new or used car lot recently, there's not a lot of cars on the dealerships lots, and that's what's pushing inflation higher. It's a lot of goods prices. So if you look at the primary source of inflationary pressures recently, it's new and used cars. And that's a supply and demand issue. And the good news is, going forward, these supply chain issues should start to resolve themselves, and you could see inflation begin to moderate. The other big source of inflation has been higher energy prices. So year over year, the CPI was up, the consumer price index was up 7% in December. If you strip out supply chain issues and energy, it was up closer to 3%. So our inflation problems are hopefully going to be temporary.
Yeah. So you're feeling relatively optimistic about things. It's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of reason for doom and gloom. With each passing wave of COVID, the economic costs are going to diminish. And that's attributed to rising vaccinations, boosters. Hopefully children 0 to 5 can be vaccinated soon. And that would be really, really important for the labor supply problems that we're experiencing, because hopefully parents can get back to work. And schools don't have to shut down as frequently or go virtual learning. But I think the economy's near-term prospects are really good. We're going to have an unemployment rate below 4% by the mid of this year. So, if you look back at past recoveries, this one's sort of like on steroids. This is a very, very strong and robust economic recovery. It's just, and part of the reason is the nature of the recession. It was caused by pandemic. We locked down, shut down an economy for several months. And as we're reopening, we're booming. And I think the economy is going to do really well this year. things began to slow in 2013 or 2030, excuse me, 2023. But for now, everything's going to feel much better going forward.
So for the small businesses that are listening in, a lot of them are probably. I mean, I every just about every store window I go down and look at on Main Street has help wanted. But what's going on in the labor markets, and particularly in retail and restaurants and those types of businesses?
There's a lot going on in the labor market. I think the biggest hurdle that small, medium, and large businesses, everyone's feeling the pain of labor supply problems. And there's a few reasons why the prime age employment to population ratio, which is those 25 to 54, uh, is low. I mean, it's rising, but we're still below where it was pre-pandemic. People just haven't come back in the labor force, and there's a number of reasons behind that. And again, it gets back to the pandemic. People were worried about going back to work, contracting COVID, bringing it home, getting loved ones sick. And that's particularly true for those that have multi-generational households, which the number of those has increased steadily over the last couple of decades. The other thing is daycare, childcare issues. Unfortunately, that burden fell very heavily on women. So if you look at the women's participation in the labor force among those that have young children, it has barely recovered since the pandemic. So hopefully, once we get on the other side of the pandemic, they'll be able to come back in large numbers, and that should ease some of these labor supply problems. The other thing is, I think there's a lot of job switching. There's a lot of churn in the labor market. People that were in retail or restaurants, uh, some of them are considering uh, new careers. They just those two industries got crushed by the pandemic, and people are wondering, is this for me, or maybe I should look for jobs elsewhere, different industries.
Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot. I'm hearing about folks that have had that epiphany. It's almost like they've. I mean, these are hard jobs to do, right? You're on your feet all day. If you're, even a manager running a restaurant, you're dealing with a lot of stress, a lot of issues, and people. I think a lot of them kind of hit a wall, and I think we saw that in the job creation, the business starts numbers, where there was a sharp growth in business creation, and people had downtime, and they were starting a lot of home-based businesses. Would you say that
Mhm.
was behind some of those numbers?
Yeah, I think so. I think something we didn't discuss is something people are referring to as the Great Resignation. A lot of quits, but also retirements. Early retirements have increased. People are seeing their nest data increase because the stock market hits new highs, which seems like day in and day out. House prices are steadily rising in the U.S. I mean, house price growth last year was very, very strong, and should continue to rise. So I think people are opting to retire a little bit early. But again, that's why I always focus on prime age workers, those 25 to 54. They need to get engaged in the labor market, and they are. So I think that's a favorable development going forward, is that we should see more labor supply. But getting back to restaurants, I think uh, you know the pandemic isn't over, and with each
Yeah.
wave, I think it just takes a further toll on restaurants. You can see spending at restaurants drops, with during the Delta wave, it's dropped during the Omicron wave. That creates a lot of uncertainty and income issues for those that are in the restaurant business. So I think like to your point, it's a very difficult job to do, and maybe looking to change careers.
Yes. We saw a lot of innovation, though, in the restaurant space, fast innovation,
Mhm.
curbside pickup. I mean, tented areas. I saw an amazing array of patio areas, outdoor dining, and that's really, we've seen that continue somewhat. I mean, the tents kind of went away after Delta, and I saw a few popping up again. It seems like the small business space, particular, small business owners are doing what they need to do to make ends meet. Um, and it seems like this period in time has just been a real tester for how innovative you can be to keep your business running.
Yeah, I think these are all great points, and I think this is one reason why you should be very optimistic about the economy. Is that Businesses, small businesses, they adapt. You throw a challenge at them, they'll figure out a solution. Using the outdoor dining, for example, or curbside pickup. In downtown Westchester, where our office is located, they shut down a street, for during the summer months, just so people could sit outside and help the restaurants out. But you know, I think innovation has increased. I think the entrepreneurial spirit has, hopefully been rekindled because of the pandemic. I think people, if you look at new business formations, they're up. I think a lot of people are starting their own businesses. Some people that are retired, maybe they weren't ready to completely shut it off, so they're starting their own, small business. And the data I look at is weekly employment identification numbers. And that was very, very strong growth in that throughout last year, and it's been strong so far this year. And I think that bodes well for business formations, innovation, productivity growth, and these are all things that will help the economy and small businesses and individuals. Not just this year, but longer term as well.
Yeah. So Chairman Powell had said that there will be some interest rates increases this year. I think there's going to be 3. What should small businesses be doing to anticipate or get ahead of the curve on that? Is it time to get financing that they need at a lower interest rate, or what would you say to a small business that's looking at the prospect of higher interest rates?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, interest rates are going to go up, and they're likely going to go up pretty quickly because I think the Fed has, recognized that, their inflation problems are lasting a little bit longer than they had hoped. And also the economy, it's doing well. It doesn't need this extraordinary monetary policy accommodation. So it's kind
Yeah.
of time for the Fed to take their foot off the accelerator and hopefully they gradually apply it to the brake and slow things down. But businesses that have variable loans, I think you're going to see a rush to refi because interest rates are historically low. So we're likely not going to see these interest rates until the next recession, and hopefully that's years away. So the only place interest rates have to go is up. And I think what's important is not just necessarily the level of interest rates because we're coming off very low rates right now. It's the speed that they increase, and that could undermine business investment. It could undermine financial market conditions, and that's one area that I'm concerned about is a policy error by the Fed. There's that saying that recessions or expansions don't die of old age. Something kills them, and usually it's the Fed. And if they go barreling into this and try to raise interest rates very, very quickly and reduce the size of their balance sheet, I think that could really undermine the economy.
Yeah. Yeah. So from an economist standpoint, are there any sectors that give you concern, and are there any sectors that excite you right now?
Well, there's plenty to be excited about in the economy. And, look at the housing market, for example. I think the prospects there, the outlook there is favorable. I mean, we're not building enough homes. So I think, construction is going to do really well over the next couple of years. Now, of course, there are some labor supply issues. Construction costs have gone up. That those pressures should start to ease over the next 12, 18 months. But I think the biggest hurdle for the housing market is not a demand issue. I mean, demand for new homes, existing homes is very, very strong, and that's partly attributed to the improving job market, but also very low mortgage rates. The issue is finding buildable lots, and that's going to be kind of a constraint. Maybe that limits how many homes we can build, but I think housing is one area to be excited about. I think the other thing is uh, innovation, and what we talked about with businesses adapting. And I think productivity growth in the U.S. So how productive, how many widgets in an hour we can make, is going to be much stronger than it was pre-pandemic. And when productivity goes up, that improves people's living standards. So I think that's another area that we got. It was very, very weak after the last recession. I think this time around, it's going to be much, much different.
Fantastic. Any closing thoughts, Ryan?
Hang in there with inflation. It's a top of mind. A lot of our clients are asking us, when's inflation going to moderate? It's coming. You know, it may not slow as quickly as we had previously hoped, but I think as these supply chain issues begin to ease, as the pandemic hopefully winds down, the underlying fundamentals and the long-term drivers of inflation haven't changed. We have an aging population that's disinflationary. The how fast money's changing hands is very low. So, I think we're just going through a temporary period of high inflation, which is new for many people. I mean, I've been a professional economist for 16 years, and I've never seen inflation until last year. So, hang in there on the inflation front, and cross your fingers that the Fed can kind of land the plane perfectly on the tarmac. It's going to be bumpy, over the next few years, but don't count the Fed out. They may be able to pull this landing off perfectly.
Yeah. It might be in the Hudson, though, right? We may need Sully for this one.
I'm going to use it. That's a great one. I might have to use that. I'm going to steal that from you.
Okay, you got it. Well, Ryan, thanks.
Hopefully we don't go down that road. Hopefully we don't have the plane in the Hudson, but it's going to be a bumpy landing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been very enlightening, my friend. I'm feeling a little better about the situation, given the insights you just shared. How can people learn more about you and Moody's Analytics Economic Insights?
So anytime you start to panic and you get worried, call me. I'm here. I'll talk you off the cliff. At least for the next couple of years, things are going to be fine. With Moody's, I would suggest or kind of pitch our Inside Economics podcast. You need to come on. It's with me, Chris Dorides, who's our deputy chief economist, and Mark Zandi, our chief economist. And it's a weekly podcast, and we talk everything about the economy and how our views are changing from week to week.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been listening, and it's a really super awesome vibe that you have going there on that podcast. So, I would love to have Experian go on there. So thanks for taking time out, and thanks for talking me down off the ledge there.
Yeah. Oh, no, thank you very much for having me. I always enjoy our conversation.
All right, Ryan. Thank you so much.